friends. This is Benjamin from English Classes Online. In today's video, we are going to look at Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, the major themes, and of course, the part 2. In a previous video, we discussed some major themes of this novel. And from the comments of one of our viewers, suggestion was made for discussing other themes. All right. And that is why this video has been created and uploaded so that our viewers and subscribers will have the part 2 of the themes, the major themes of Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. If you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Click on the bell icon as well so that whenever a new video is uploaded on the channel, you will be notified instantly. Let's dive into the lesson right away. We shall begin by looking at the themes of Wuthering Heights at a glance. Number 1, ownership, the theme of ownership. 2, marriage. 3, nature and culture. 4, ambition. 5, relationship. 6, power. And 7, and evil. Now, this will bring all the themes we discussed to 14. In part 1, we discussed 7 themes, and in this part 2, we are discussing 7 themes as well. That will really enrich your understanding of the novel. And wherever you are called upon to analyze the novel, you will have adequate information to do so effectively. Now, let's proceed. Now, the first theme we want to look at is the theme of ownership. Of course, you understand what ownership is about, and we are specifically looking at the theme of property ownership, which is a central theme in the novel. Now, after the death of Mr. Ian Shaw, his son Hindley inherits Wuthering Heights. So the ownership passes over to Hindley. This gives him the power and authority to degrade Heathcliff to a manual laborer. So you see, just as it is in today's society, the one who owns the property owns the authority within that environment. Now, through his clever manipulation, Heathcliff is able to take over the property from Hindley, who carelessly gambles it away. You don't forget that after having suffered a lot of abuse and degradation from those who own the land, so to say, the upper class, including Hindley, Heathcliff learns that the only way for him to gain access to power and authority in the society is to acquire wealth and become a property owner, all right? And we also, from another angle, we look at the part that ownership plays, in dictating the actions of the characters in this novel. For example, Catherine's decision to marry Edgar Linton instead of Heathcliff is based on her desire to gain access to Edgar's wealth and upper class family. So it is all about ownership, possession, because if you have read the novel, you will understand, you must have discovered that Catherine and Heathcliff loved each other passionately, all right? But instead of marrying Heathcliff, then Catherine decides to marry Edgar Linton because Edgar Linton is a wealthy person, all right? So he owns Thrushcross Grange, the estate, very decent estate, that the man inherits from his father, Mr. Linton. And so uh, Catherine decides to marry him in order to get access to material possessions. Like other characters in the novel, her choice is motivated by material possessions. Then let's also look at Heathcliff's marriage to Isabella Linton, and we know it's all aimed at getting ownership of the Linton family estate, Thrush Crush Grange. So we see a situation where the actions and reactions of most of the characters are based on the desire to acquire material possessions, to gain ownership of certain material property. Now, this is how Heathcliff takes over the ownership of both properties. Through manipulation, is able to, gain ownership of Wuthering Heights and Crush Grange. All right. Now, the next theme is the theme of marriage. Of course, in Wuthering Heights, marriage is portrayed as largely motivated by social and economic reasons rather than love for each other. Most of the characters in the novel marry for socioeconomic reasons to gain ownership of property or to enjoy the privileges of the upper class, not because they necessarily loved each other. Now, I had earlier given the example of Catherine. You know, she chooses to marry Edgar Linton uh, instead of Heathcliff because of her desire for socioeconomic prominence. You see, Catherine loves, in her heart, she loves Heathcliff, but in her head, she desires to acquire property, to become prominent. So she decides to marry uh, Edgar. And again, Heathcliff, because of Heathcliff's decision to marry Isabella, as earlier mentioned, is motivated by his desire to acquire Cross Grange and to get back at Edgar for depriving him of Catherine. Heathcliff, also arranges marriage between his son Linton and younger Catherine in order to achieve his selfish goals and not because the two young persons love each other. So we are looking at marriage in this novel as something motivated not by love, but by material considerations, economic reasons. Now, the next theme that of the novel is the theme of nature and culture. In the novel, Wuthering Heights is depicted as a place that has wild, windy moors. All right, if you examine the setting of the novel, you see how Wuthering Heights is described. The environment is presented as wild and windy. The moors within that particular community. The inhabitants are also portrayed as characters who are governed by their passions, especially Catherine and Heathcliff. Now, on the other hand, Cross Grange is depicted as having calm and orderly parks with civilized inhabitants. So here we are looking at the two environments, the two localities, Wuthering Heights, noted for nature, the natural features of the moors that are wild and windy. All right, it's a stormy, the weather is stormy, even the environment, they are close to nature. And you find most of the inhabitants living close to nature. So the inhabitants of Wuthering Heights enjoy spending time out in the moors, whereas those at the Grange enjoy reading and quietness. So one environment is known for being close to nature, having that love for nature, or being associated with, their natural environment. The other locality is civilized, all right? And they are more educated, if you like. Now, the novel is a portrayal of the contrast between two ways of life, the wild and natural way of life, and the refined and civilized way of life. Now, these two ways of life are, are portrayed, placed side by side, and then we can see the difference. In Wuthering Heights, we find Heathcliff, whose life and actions are governed by passions. For example, Heathcliff is deprived of education. During the lifetime of Mr. Earnshaw, he wants Heathcliff to be educated. But the moment he dies, his son Hindley stops Heathcliff from any education. In the Grange, we find Edgar Linton, who is educated, calm, and refined. All right. Now, that is another theme. Then we are going to look at the theme of ambition. That is another theme that is a recurring theme in this novel. Ambition is a major theme of the novel. This is evident in most of the characters whose actions are motivated by their strong desire to achieve something in life. Of course, ambition is a strong desire to achieve something in life. In Heathcliff, for example, we find the determination to reinvent himself by becoming rich. Now, having suffered deprivation and having suffered abuse on account of his poor background, his ambition is to become rich. Now, he's going away to become rich and educated, is motivated by his desire to climb up the social ladder and to be able to take revenge on those who have mistreated him on account of his poor background. His ambition also stems from his desire to be reunited with his love, Catherine. He feels bitter when Catherine marries Edgar Linton instead of him. And he knows that Catherine loves him, only that Catherine has considered economic reasons. And so this actually makes him really, really determined. He has very high ambition to make it big in life so that he will be able to please the woman he loves. Now, Catherine's decision to marry Edgar Linton instead of Heathcliff is motivated by her desire or ambition for wealth and membership of the upper class in society. See, again, we see ambition motivating the action of another character. Catherine's decision to marry Edgar is based on ambition. And because we know that her love for Heathcliff eventually gives way to her ambition to become wealthy and part of the upper class. She marries Edgar not for love, but for her ambition to gain access to the upper class and to the wealth controlled by the upper class. Now, Heathcliff's decision to marry Isabella is also motivated by ambition. It's motivated by the desire to inherit Thrushcross Grange, as well as the desire to take his revenge on Edgar Linton for taking Catherine, whom he loves. Now, so this is his ambition. This is his motivation. It is the same ambition for property that motivates Heathcliff to arrange a marriage between his son Linton and young Cathy, the daughter of Edgar and Catherine. He knows that once his son marries young Catherine, Thrushcross Grange, which is young Catherine's inheritance, will belong to his son, and indirectly, the Grange will belong to him, Heathcliff, as well. So it is all about ambition. Now, the next theme is the theme of relationship. We see this theme as a central theme also in the novel. The novel is a story of the interpersonal relationships among the inhabitants of Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. First, Mr. Earnshaw's action in adopting Heathcliff into his family brings him into a father and son relationship with Heathcliff. He adopts Heathcliff, brings him into his own home, and there is a relationship between the two. Heathcliff sees Mr. Earnshaw as his father, and Mr. Earnshaw sees Heathcliff as his son. All right? And we find that Mr. Earnshaw maintains that cordial relationship by treating Heathcliff as his son throughout his lifetime. However, after the death of Mr. Earnshaw, his son Hindley deprived Heathcliff of that sense of belonging to the family, and he degrades Heathcliff to a servant and a manual laborer. Now, another instance of relationship in Wuthering Heights is the passionate, obsessive, but unfulfilled love relationship between Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff. All right? So we see that a relationship, a robust, passionate relationship exists between Catherine and Heathcliff. But this is eventually truncated when Catherine chooses to marry Edgar Linton. And when this happens, Heathcliff becomes bitter and unforgiving. And from that moment, all his actions are motivated by the desire to take revenge. When Heathcliff decides to marry Isabella, the relationship between two of them is not based on true love, but on Heathcliff's ulterior motives. So we find a situation where the relationship between some of the characters is ill-motivated. So that relationship between Heathcliff and Isabella eventually gives rise to abuse and domestic violence, culminating in Isabella's departure and eventual death. Now we find the relationship between Catherine and Edgar characterized by crisis as well, and psychological traumas on the part of Catherine, because in her heart, Catherine loves Heathcliff, and that love remains evident, even though she is legally married to Edgar. The relationship between Heathcliff's son, and young Cathy, Edgar and Catherine's daughter, is a result of Heathcliff's manipulative arrangement. It is Heathcliff arranging that relationship, all right, forcing it on them because of his ambition. Now, the next theme is the theme of power. The desire for power is portrayed as a major motivation for the actions and reactions of most of the characters in this novel. It is also pertinent to note that most of the characters tend to abuse whatever power they possess. That's one thing we see here. When they acquire power, they possess it. Of course, with the exceptions of the earlier generation. Now, Mr. Earnshaw, we know, actually utilizes power positively. He adopts Mr. Heathcliff and gives him a new lease of life. But after the death of Mr. Earnshaw, his son Hindley, who inherits Wuthering Heights, uses his power and authority against Heathcliff by degrading him as a servant and a manual laborer. Then in Heathcliff also, it is evident that his pursuit of wealth is aimed at gaining access to power and authority, not only for his freedom, but also for revenge. When he eventually becomes rich, he uses his power and authority to take revenge on Hindley, who has mistreated him on account of his poor background. By taking Hindley's inheritance, Heathcliff gets revenge for Hindley's past mistreatments against him. Heathcliff also goes ahead to deny Harrington, Hindley's son, formal education in the same way as Hindley had done to him. So we see abuse of power as a major reality in this novel. Then, when Catherine chooses to marry Edgar Linton instead of Heathcliff, it is because she wants to gain access to wealth and membership of the upper class. In other words, she wants to become one of the most powerful ladies in that society. That is exactly what motivates her marriage to Edgar. Now, again, Heathcliff's decision to marry Isabella is motivated by the desire to inherit Thrushcross Grant, which will give him power and authority. When he trusts Cathy and Nellie in Wuthering Heights and compels Cathy to marry his son Linton, his action is aimed at cementing his ownership of the grant. Having obtained possession of both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grant, Heathcliff will become the most powerful person in these communities. Thus, we find Heathcliff a man who is capable of using all kinds of harsh methods in order to gain the power he desires. And once he gains that power, he uses them for revenge, he uses them in a negative manner. Now, good and evil, that's another thing we can find in this novel. The novel raises the moral issues of good and evil, all right, in human behavior. In the character of Mr. Earnshaw, we find an example of good and kind behavior towards others. For example, he adopts Heathcliff and treats him kindly as he does to his biological children. That's an example of good. After the death of Mr. Earnshaw, however, his son Hindley chooses to mistreat Heathcliff. He degrades Heathcliff by turning him into a servant and manual laborer. That's an example of evil. All right, so we have instances of characters exhibiting good moral values, and we have some other characters exhibiting evil traits. And that's what the novel examines, all right? Now, the perception of evil is also evident in the words and opinions of some of the characters. Through the character Joseph, of course, the character Joseph is an allusion to a morally upright character in the Bible. You know the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis, all right? So through Joseph, we hear that Heathcliff and Cathy are morally decadent. You know, Joseph is a man who presents himself as a morally upright. Joseph insists that Heathcliff and Cathy will go to hell because they are not a representation of God and do not show character traits of a Christian. Now, we also find Nellie commenting that Hindley's treatment, the way Hindley treated Heathcliff, was enough to make a fiend of a saint. By referring to Heathcliff as a cuckoo in the nest, Nellie indicates that Heathcliff has brought evil into their residence. So we have some of the characters also commenting by way of making value judgments or on other characters' actions. And so that examines the difference between good and evil, and even in a normal everyday life in today's society, there is moral value judgment going on everywhere. You even in the news and in discussion of news headlines, you see people in different countries, in different societies, making value judgments of the actions and the inactions of their leaders. So it's a reality that people always examine things based on whether it is good or it is evil. Now, Heathcliff's relationship with Isabella is characterized by abuse, violence, and other evils. Now, after they are married, Isabella realizes that Heathcliff doesn't love her, but is treating her with disdain. On her own part, Isabella develops so much hatred for Heathcliff that she uses dangerous animals, such as a tiger and a serpent, to show how evil and dangerous he is, that Heathcliff is. So you can see references made to evil actions, all right? So that is how far we could go in today's video. And this is where we draw the curtain on today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you did, like the video and share the video with your friends and associates, especially those whom you discover are going to sit for any of their English exams, in which the novel Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte will feature. All right. So if you share this video with them, people like that, you will be helping them to score high in their exam. And anyone whom you love and who is going to sit any English exam where Wuthering Heights is a recommended text, then of course you should do them a favor by sharing this video with them. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, leave them in the comments section below. If you browse through the description section, you will find a free PDF ebook on the basic units of English grammar. If you are interested in it, click on the link and you'll be able to download the PDF ebook free of charge. You will also find my ebook titled Good Success in English and others like How to Score High in Your English Exams, Good Success English Handbook, and other ebooks. If you are interested in any of them, you simply click on the link and download a copy for yourself. Now, I want to say a big thank you to all of you for being part of today's video. I look forward to seeing you in the next class. Goodbye for now and remain blessed. Many thanks for watching today's video. A big thank you to all of you out there for being part of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, kindly subscribe to this channel. Subscribe now as a way of giving us support. For notification about new videos, click on the bell icon. You will find the bell icon. Click on it so that whenever a new video is uploaded, you will be instantly notified. If you have actually enjoyed the video, like and share the video with your friends and relatives. This is very important. If you have any comments, leave your comments below. Any questions, any suggestions, we would gladly receive them and respond promptly and positively to them. See you in the next video. I look forward to always seeing you in the new video. Thank you and